Hi everyone, this is Eagle News. I'm Ken Cruz in Washington. It's Saturday, April 15, 2023, here in the nation's capital. The week's recap begins with China reporting the first recorded human death caused by H3N8 bird flu virus. Marcel Ferrier reports.
On March 27, China notified WHO that a woman has died from the H3N8 bird flu virus. The 56-year-old was from Guangdong province in southeast China. WHO says this is the first death and the third reported case of human infection with the said strain. All three cases have been reported from China. Epidemiological investigation and close contact tracing have been carried out. No other cases have been found among close contacts of the infected individual. WHO says it appears that this virus does not have the ability to spread easily from person to person. The risk of it spreading among humans is considered to be low. But due to the constantly evolving nature of influenza viruses, the health agency stresses the importance of global surveillance. Marcel Ferrier, Washington, D.C., Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
9/11 victims and certain spouses and children will be receiving compensations totaling to $2.7 billion. Jeff Sanidad reports.
In the coming weeks, the U.S. Victims of State-Sponsored Terrorism Fund, or the Fund, will be giving a total of $2.7 billion to over 5,300 victims of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. Certain spouses and children of the victims of the 9/11 attacks will be given compensations as well. According to the Justice Department's Criminal Division, the fund has collected more than $2 billion in deposits from forfeiture proceeds, penalties, and fines. This arising from violations of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or the Trading with the Enemy Act. The fund was established by the U.S. Congress in 2015. It has paid more than $3.3 billion to victims in 4 rounds of distributions. The payments announced are in addition to the said distributions. The number of eligible claimants has grown from over 2,000 in 2017 to over 15,500 today. Of those, over 12,100 claimants are 9/11 victims and their family members. Over 3,600 claimants have claims related to the other acts of international state-sponsored terrorism. Jeff Sanidad, Washington, D.C., Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
In Canada, Toronto police bust a major cross-border trafficking operation that moves illegal firearms from the United States. Joshua Santillana tells us more.
42 people arrested, 422 criminal charges laid, and 173 firearms were seized Tuesday morning in Toronto, following a year-long cross-border firearm trafficking investigation led by Toronto Police Services. About a year ago, Toronto Police Services Firearms Enforcement Unit with the Toronto Drug Squad and Intelligence Services, alongside nearby county police, started Project Moneypenny, which saw the illegal trafficking of drugs and narcotics between Canada and the U.S. Officers went undercover as part of the investigation. Majority of the firearms were smuggled into Canada from the United States. 87 handguns were seized in Chicago, which originated from Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and Texas. The individuals arrested were mostly residents of the Greater Toronto Area, including Whitby, Pickering, and Barrie, and with ages 17 to 43 years old, with one individual reported as a minor. Joshua Santillana, Toronto, Ontario, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
In other news, an instrument to monitor air pollution in North America has reached the skies. Myla Simbolan has the details.
A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket successfully launches from Florida. It carries a new NASA device that can track air pollution over North America.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Engines full power and lift off.
The Tropospheric Emissions Monitoring of Pollution or TEMPO instrument will allow scientists to monitor air pollutants and their emission sources from space more comprehensively than ever before, down to the neighborhood level.
When we talk about air quality, we're really talking about the health of the population as it has to breathe the air that we need to live. One of the real difficulties in helping people understand that air quality is a problem is that on a beautiful day, you may not see evidence of poor air quality, but it's there. You might be surprised to hear that the number of deaths in the United States per year attributed to air quality is estimated to be about 60,000.
NASA's TEMPO project manager Kevin Doherty says the instrument will measure pollution and air quality on an hourly basis during the daytime, all the way from Puerto Rico up to Canada. The American Lung Association warns that over 40% of the U.S. population, that is 137 million people, live in places with unhealthy levels of particle pollution or ozone. Air pollution is blamed for some 60,000 premature deaths a year. Among the pollutants tracked by TEMPO will be nitrogen dioxide. This is produced from the combustion of fossil fuels, formaldehyde, and ozone. Myla Simbulan, Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
From dwarf tomatoes to fire safety gel to astronaut blood, samples of these will be returning to Earth for further studies on life in space. Philip Toledo reports.
This weekend, the 27th SpaceX resupply mission will be returning from the International Space Station, and with it, it will be bringing a batch of scientific samples from orbit. Scientists aboard the International Space Station have been conducting studies in microgravity of plant growth, fire safety, and changes in muscles and arteries, according to NASA. When these samples return to Earth, they will be taken to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida so that scientists can perform additional studies before effects of our planet's gravity fully kick in. The returning samples include dwarf tomatoes grown in orbit, which are important as NASA understands the capability to grow fresh food in space is key for future long-duration missions. Additionally, gel samples from studies on fire safety in space will be returning. Fires in space are extremely dangerous and deadly, and this information will help determine future spacecraft materials and fire suppression techniques. The European Space Agency is also studying changes to muscle properties in spaceflight, and blood samples returning to Earth will help future astronauts maintain muscle function and even help with rehabilitation for individuals on Earth. Similarly, blood samples from a Canadian study on vascular aging are returning and will help scientists reduce the risks to astronaut cardiovascular health, as well as providing insight to help treat similar issues for the aging population here on the ground. Interested in learning more? According to NASA, you can view footage of the return mission as well as other information on their website, nasa.gov, as well as the International Space Station blog. Philip Toledo, Atlanta, Georgia, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Extraordinary stories from Thomas Likeness today, from NASA's Mars habitat simulation to the dangerous life of harvesting nuts to a friendship between man and bird. These and more on Correspondent at Large.
And now news and commentary from around the globe. Space explorers preparing for the next frontier, the red planet, Mars. And to get them ready, NASA has built a simulation of the habitat on Mars. It's located in Houston, Texas. It's called the Mars Dune Alpha, located in a warehouse on the campus of the Johnson Space Center. 4 volunteers will move into the simulator this summer. They'll spend 1 year there. Now, this habitat has 4 small rooms, a gym, a PlayStation, and a lot of red sand, because, well, that's what's on the surface of Mars, a lot of red sand. This structure was built using a 3D printer. The volunteers will conduct activities that a crew would, things like spacewalks, exercise, growing crops, and maintaining the habitat. NASA plans to monitor the physical and mental health of the volunteers to see how they handle the isolation. Space exploration, not a job I would want. And here's another occupation I think I will give a pass. It's the hard life of a Brazil nut harvester. This is seasonal work. The job runs from December to March. Location, Brazil, Bolivia, and Peru. That's where the nuts are grown. And it's in the Amazon forest. For some 80,000 indigenous families in Bolivia, this is their means of livelihood. Now, the nuts grow on trees that can reach a height of 60 meters. They're contained in these large shells, kind of like coconuts, and each one contains about 18 to 20 nuts. In season, these shells fall to the ground. Nut pickers use a long stick to pick up the shells, split them open, and put the nuts in a sack. Sounds easy, right? Not so. It's dangerous work. Pickers get caught in bad weather and have to watch they're not hurt or killed by falling branches. Then there's the mosquitoes. And even more dangerous, snakes. A 70-kilogram bag of Brazil nuts will net a picker about $40. That's about 2,200 pesos. Again, not on my list of preferred occupations. But I am getting worried about my job, which I love. I just hope the bosses aren't watching this next item. You see, in Kuwait, a media outlet has unveiled a virtual news anchor using artificial intelligence. This is Fedha. She appeared on the Twitter account of the Kuwait News website last weekend. She wasn't on for very long, but generated a flood of response from viewers, including journalists. Now, the site plans to use Fedha to read online bulletins. Aside from job losses, some of the concerns about virtual journalists include the spread of disinformation and the threat to artistic integrity. In India, Mohammed Arif wants his friend, who's being held captive, released. His friend, incidentally, is a large bird that has been captured by wildlife authorities. Now, this all started last year when Arif, who's a farmer, rescued an injured Saris crane. These birds can grow to nearly 2 meters tall. Over a 6-week period, Arif nursed the bird back to health, and then he set it free, or he thought he did anyway. But the crane remained near his home. It followed him whenever he went for bike rides. When it became hungry, the bird waited by the door of his home to be fed. Videos of the adventures of Arif and his feathered friend have gone viral, but the good times came to an end last month when authorities captured the crane and put it in a zoo more than 4 hours away. It's being held in quarantine now. Arif says he visited the bird last week. He says it was flapping its wings excitedly and jumping up and down, just happy to see him. Arif says the crane has never committed a crime, has never been caged. He adds it should be set free. Saris cranes are considered a vulnerable species. Fewer than 20,000 of the birds remain in India. I'll be back in 7 days, and until then, I wish you all peace, joy, and happiness in the ensuing week. Thomas I. Likeness, Correspondent at Large, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
In Las Vegas, urban gardening is planting its roots deeper into the community. Anna Kui has the story on Down to Earth.
An urban farming project opened Wednesday at James Gay Park in the historic West Side in Las Vegas to help address food insecurity and help residents eat healthier. The initiative is part of the 100 Plan, a community-led strategy for revitalizing the historic West Side, and was made possible by a private partnership as mentioned by Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman.
This urban farm was most generally funded by the $500,000 donation from the MGM Resorts through the Mayor's Fund of Las Vegas Life.
The development features a 320-square-foot space with 2 climate-controlled containers to sustain about 8 tons of produce. The planting of leafy vegetables like arugula, lettuce, and bok choy, to name a few, started at the end of March, with the first harvest anticipated for the first Tuesday in May. Here is what a couple of attendees had to say about the project.
I think vegetables, we already know how important that is. You know, our infrastructure is really important, especially in the black community. So I'm really excited about it, and I think it's going to do great things.
Yes, it's a great project. Anytime that you can help people and you can get healthy food for people, that is what we're here for.
According to Las Vegas City Councilman Cedric Creer, plans for distribution after each harvest are yet to be finalized, but may include holding a farmers market, creating community distribution sites, and eventually building a cooperative grocery store with community partnerships right here at the park. In Las Vegas, Anna Kui, Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
In Papua New Guinea, one of the country's emergency service providers asked the public for cooperation, especially during dangerous times. This amid a shortage in ambulance units servicing the community. Echo Hortaleza Quinola on Oceania at a Glance.
In and outside of Morobele province, only one ambulance is at work. In many instances, other critical cases have to wait for hours for the lone ambulance to arrive. During continuous heavy downpours and floods all over the city, accidents and emergency situations rise. Here in Papua New Guinea, the primary ambulance and aeromedical response provider is St. John Ambulance, or SJA. With very limited resources, St. John Ambulance, a national emergency services organization, is asking the public to take extra care as it can only do so much. It is also asking the help of medical staff and practitioners to help cater the needs of Central Province, East New Britain, and Morobe. SJA says that the lack of ambulance station and trained personnel hinders immediate response during emergencies. Echo Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
Parents hoping to stoke their kids' interest in golf turn sunny weekends into an educational and fun family matter. In Palos Verdes, California, Eva and Alan find dads, moms, and kids enjoying a ladies' professional golf tournament. Here's EBC Sports International.
For some families, a sunny weekend calls for a trip to the golf course,
where kids can learn to appreciate the sport and potentially even compete in it.
So I'm a big golfer myself. I have 3 daughters as well, and so I'm hoping they all get into the game and makes it fun for them to be out here and see successful people playing.
I think LPGA is just getting more and more exciting now because there are more people who are interested in it, and there's more exposure and there's more network coverage. And a lot of people right now are playing, trying to get into university or college teams.
I think it's wonderful to watch the LPGA professionals out there. They have wonderful technique and form. I think it's great too to show it's for everyone and for families.
I'm trying to get him, he's sort of just started playing the game, so I'm trying to teach him a little bit about the etiquette and, just being comfortable around the golf course and to see what it's like to actually play at a high level, to see how the players conduct themselves. So great time to just, spend some time with him.
And from the kids' point of view, the golf course provides a place for them to explore the sport while spending quality family time.
I maybe want to be a golf player one day. I like it because it's fun and interesting.
It's very frustrating when you start out, but once you start playing better, it becomes very fun. I would like to play for a high school team.
And then hopefully.
And then maybe even college.
I like to see all the girls and how good they are. I just like to be here with my dad, and I like golf.
I have been having so much fun.
Actually, not interesting. A ball. It's number 6, by the way.
When parents mention greens, kids usually recoil in horror, thinking that veggies must be on the menu.
While the greens of a golf course, on the other hand, will most likely be met with a lot less resistance.
Eva and Alan, Palos Verdes, California. Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
Every spring, the Washington, D.C. region gets an extra taste of Japanese vibe. Along with the blooming of the cherry blossoms also comes the Sakura Festival. At the National Harbor, Arlene Ocampo reports on this week's Color My World.
Here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the National Cherry Blossom Celebration continues. Sakura Sunday, held every year here at the National Harbor, is filled with cultural activities. From a Japanese marketplace where one can purchase Japanese food, to Japanese-inspired vendors of anime items, including video games, toys, and other novelty items. Cultural delights, sushi demonstrations, and a place to buy ramen add to the overall Sakura vibe. Plus, bubble tea for the win. Music and dance filled the harbor air. Traditional Japanese dance, pop performances, drumming, such a sight to behold. Martial arts demonstrations cannot be missed. A traditional kimono show delights spectators. Book reading featuring Japanese culture engages families. What an experience. Arlene Ocampo, National Harbor, Maryland, Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
Anime in-person conventions are back, and fans from far and wide travel to different cities to make up for years lost to the pandemic. Today, our very own Francisco will give us some tips on how to not miss anything during these activity-packed events. Francis?
SakuraCon is happening in Seattle, Washington this weekend. In recent years, anime conventions have become increasingly popular among fans of Japanese animation and pop culture. But with so many people attending these events, it can be overwhelming and difficult to navigate. To help make the most out of the experience, here are some tips and tricks on attending an anime convention.
First, plan ahead. Research the convention schedule and map out the events and panels that interest you the most. This will help you avoid missing out on something you really wanted to see. Next, make sure to dress comfortably. You'll be on your feet for hours, so wear comfortable shoes and clothes that won't make you too hot or too cold. Many people choose to cosplay or dress up as their favorite anime characters. If you're planning to do this, make sure to bring comfortable shoes and any necessary props or accessories. Another important tip is to stay hydrated and well fed. Bring a water bottle and snacks, as food lines can be long and expensive. If you have any dietary restrictions, it's a good idea to bring your own food. When it comes to purchasing merchandise, be mindful of your budget. Set a limit for how much you're willing to spend and stick to it. Many vendors will accept cash or card, but it's always a good idea to bring some cash just in case. A main attraction that everyone participates in is cosplay or costume play. If you like to take photos of cosplayers, make sure as a courtesy to ask them for permission before you take their photo. Lastly, don't forget to take breaks and rest when you need to. Anime conventions can be exhausting both mentally and physically. By following these tips, you'll be able to fully enjoy your anime convention experience. With careful planning, comfortable clothing, proper hydration and snacks, budgeting, and rest, you'll be able to make the most of this exciting event.
Francis Mexica Francisco, Seattle, Washington. Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
And before we let you go, here's our photo of the week by Rondell Holgado. This was taken at the Larry Berg Flight Path Park, where one could go and watch planes fly over. Amazing. And thank you all for joining us again. If there are stories or topics you want us to share with you, just comment below. View, like, share our other shows. City Limits with Alan Basalyahe. Connected with Dr. David. Take a seat and join us with Anna Kui. Plate Date with Mike Hudson and Friends. Plus, Journey, Stories of Filipinos Abroad with Kathleen Cruz. Love your last name. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Eagle News Live. I'm Ken Cruz. We live in extraordinary times. Happy weekend, everyone.